Hello, Tiina Susanna Farin here with another Friday Live at 3, aka my weekly masterclass. I'm really excited about today's topic. I have no idea if anyone's going to join me live, but I'm super excited. I know for a fact there's at least 2 people in this group who share my Finnish heritage. You know who you are. And so I'm really hoping that even though this is about my heritage and you might not, even I didn't know about, didn't delve into this, didn't know about this until last year. And I don't find it fascinating just because I'm Finnish. I have a little inkling that you just might find it pretty fascinating too. So I'm trying a new spot today with the camera. I don't know if this is going to work, but this is where I ended up today. So where do I begin? First, did you like my Egypt video? Because there's one thing I forgot to mention in there. You know how I said that pyramids have not been replicated yet? We still can't replicate them. A Japanese team tried to make a 1/5 scale, but they couldn't. There is this mysterious, what would you call it? Museum of sorts called Coral Castle in Florida, of all places. Now, I'm lucky because I've actually been there. Not many people know about it. There are some Discovery Channel documentaries about it, but it's called Coral Castle. And I'll just give you the Coles notes, and I'll share some pictures later. I have to go through them and find them, but I'll share some pictures because this place was really cool. So how does this even relate to the pyramids? Because this man, this tiny, short, little man who was like 4'10" or something, 4'11", he was, tiny little man, was building in the cover of night when no one was watching, building in the cover of night these stone structures, solid pieces of stone. Like there is and it's this whole kind of rock garden that he built for his wife who died, I believe. So it was like in honor of her. But he would quarry these massive pieces of stone from miles away and get them there. And no one knows how, because he wouldn't let anyone watch him work. So he and he lived on the premises while he worked at night. And so there's this, like, when you walk in, it says, there's a sign, it says, you be prepared to see wonders or something. And the first thing you walk through is this massive stone door that weighs a ton, but it pivots on like this tiny little needle up here and up here, and all you have to do is push it and it'll turn and it lets you in. Like, so even the door to this garden, this rock stone sculpture garden, is a 1-ton piece of limestone. This place is crazy. There's a sundial made out of stone. There's like moons and stars and suns and shapes, and yeah, it's really crazy. So if you want more, look up the Coral Castle in Florida. Anyway, so my point is, he's the closest he's the closest thing that we know that comes anything close to building the pyramids. I forgot to turn my, hello Sade. You're gonna love, there's 3 people in this group who share my Finnish heritage. Hold on, I just need to, I hope this doesn't disconnect, but I just need to put it, okay, I'm back. Hello, darling. Guess what I am talking about today? Kalevala. So how do I even, okay, I'm just gonna read from this book. I hope you enjoy. I was shocked. So this is not the actual Kalevala. You will find out soon what that is. But so basically, the ancient rune stories of Finland reflect our best tendencies and most eternal selves. The key to the Kalevala, this book, originally published in Finland in 1916, which is the detailed exploration of the ancient origins of Finnish mythology. Students of the ancient traditions and mystical teachings will find no better introduction to the profound esoteric meaning of the Kalevala, the Finnish national epic. I'm going to point out here that J.R.R. Tolkien borrowed a lot of Finnish to come up with the Elvish language. So, the Kalevala belongs to the older mysteries which guide the seeker to truth. It contains rich information about the spiritual realms experienced by the truth seeker during initiatory visions, for example, impressions of conditions and beings in the unseen world, and of the metaphysical philosophy of life adopted by seers. In order for the reader to understand the mystical content of the Kalevala, one needs to begin with a sense of the worldview held by sages, mystical poets, and visionaries. Then he would have a key with which to unlock the Kalevala and other holy books. So the guy who wrote this book, who's trying to break down this Finnish national epic that is the Kalevala, the person who wrote a book about a book. You following me? And so now this author, he was a Christian mystic. Never heard those two words put together. He was a writer, a Christian mystic, and a true seer from the north. While his life was not long, his teachings are timeless and universal. Ervast spoke clearly and intelligibly to the most profound questions of philosophy, theosophy, and various religions. His literary works comprise over 100 volumes. He has been and still is his nation's spiritual teacher. Sorry, I'll be reading so much I'm going to need a lot of water. Oh, I don't know if you're staying. Someone had to go. That's okay. Okay. Finland's heritage and national independence. Finland, a small country so far north that it touches the Arctic Circle, preserves a fascinating ancient history and offers a unique and profound wisdom to the world. Bordered by Russia to the east, the Gulf of Finland in the south, and the Gulf of Bothnia in the west, and Norway to the north, Finland is the least populated country in the Fenno-Scandia region. Up until the beginning of this century, it was a little recognized Grand Duchy of Tsarist Russia, devoid of a national identity. However, as political events unfolded in the early 1900s, this proved to be more a matter of definition than truth. For Finns, a cohesive cultural identity was close to their hearts for thousands of years. The primary tradition that served as the glue of Finnish cultural identity was the ancient oral tradition preserved and propagated by storytellers and shamans. They passed down star lore and wisdom teachings in stories called runes or runos from the earliest times. And today, Finland is a modern nation that stands on its own, having courageously defied the Russian Revolution by declaring itself independent in 1917. And when they say courageously defied the Russian Revolution, there was the Winter War in 1914, where the scenario is literally, they are outnumbered. There's 1 million Russian soldiers, and there's only 300,000 Finns. It's kind of like the story 300 scenario. But the Finnish beat the Russians by employing unusual tactics. For instance, they would have them led purposely into an open plain. They'd have the Russians led into an open plain, while the Finns had literally, how do I do this? Open plain, and they are buried under snow, right? Because it's wintertime, winter war. They're buried under the snow until, on both sides of them, until the Russian army comes waltzing in, and then Finland has them flanked on both sides and just goes whoop. Or by skiing into the forest and then breaking up, skiing around them and attacking them from the back. I mean, Finnish people are genius. So anyway, that's how they beat an army that was so much larger than them. And there is this Finnish word called sisu, which cannot be translated in the English language, but it just means, like true inner guts and grit and resilience and perseverance, against all odds, keeping going. Anyway, I'm veering off topic, but that's how they beat the Russians. Oh no, and I lost the page. Okay. So in the early 1800s, Finnish folklore, much of it containing ancient, oh my, hold on, just 1 second. Okay, let me start that again. In the early 1800s, Finnish folklore, much of it containing ancient memories and esoteric cosmological knowledge, was collected into a massive epic called the Kalevala. Intrepid folklorists working out of the universities at Turku and Helsinki, most notably the esteemed compiler of the Kalevala, Elias Lönnrot, struggled to record the Runo stories before the oral tradition succumbed to the pressures of modernization. These passionate folklorists, known as rune collectors, traveled the outbacks of Finland on foot and on snow skis, talking with the peasants, encouraging them to speak the ancient stories. And what a wealth of wisdom was stored in their heads. One man, Arhippa Perttunen of Latvajärvi, could recite over 4,000 lines of poetry. These stories migrated from village to village with pack peddlers and merchants, and thus variant versions of even the best known myths could be found. The great challenge for Lönnrot, a physician by profession, was to compile and cross-compare his comprehensive databank of Finnish poetry, and with accuracy and insight, weave it together into a unified whole. By 1849, 50 runos consisting of almost 23,000 lines of poetry was published. This collected work, the Kalevala, based very closely on the original poems, collected in the field, is the Finns' national treasure, their national epic that enshrines for them the greatness of their people's past. The The Kalevala contains the songs and stories of the ancient Finnish people and has been translated in its entirety into over 30 different languages. But where did the stories come from? More to the point, who are the Finns and where did they come from? In answering this, we can get a sense for the unique contribution of the Kalevala, elucidating an important mystical dimension of the human spirit. So according to one theory based upon archaeological and linguistic studies, Finnish people migrated to Finland in the remote past from northern Central Asia, originating from beyond the Ural Mountains, perhaps even as far east as China and Tibet. According to a different theory, one supported by German scholars, before the Germanic tribes swept into Europe, people of the Finnish family originally inhabited large areas from Central Europe eastward to the Ural Mountains. Afterward, parts of the Finnish group moved northward where they remain today. In any case, the Finns speak a Finno-Ugric language unrelated to the Indo-European language that is shared only by Estonians and scattered remnants of shamanistic societies in the northwestern of Russia and Siberia. The beliefs and traditions brought to Finland by the early Finns are comparable to the traditions of Asian shamanism today. The bear ceremony, for example, is described in the Kalevala, and its rituals are quite similar to the bear cult of the Ainu people who live in the islands of North Japan. Although the distance between Finland and Japan is great, the indigenous circumpolar cultures, including those in Alaska and Canada, share many basic beliefs and myths. The Finns, the Ainu, the Ostiaks, the Vatiaks, and the Tlingit, and others. These are the people of the midnight sun, so the ones the closest to the Arctic Circle, so close to the North Pole that in the summer the day never ends and in the winter the darkness is deep and long. Finland has a long-standing reputation as a bizarre, even dangerous backland filled with rune singers, wizards, and peasant shamans. Sailors in the late Middle Ages used to fear the incantation of the Finn, for he was reputed to be capable of invoking storms to sink the ships of his enemies. Other legends attribute clairvoyance and conjuring skills to the Finnish magician. Finnish mythology is rooted in shamanism. Seers and shamans undertook visionary journeys and they used the reindeer as their animal spirit companion. The pole star was for them a high god, and the nearby Big Dipper was the great bear, Otava, a god and animal spirit that was greatly revered. The ancient Finns were animists. They worshipped nature and believed that everything had an inner spirit, that everything, even stones and trees, contained consciousness. They also worshipped the deceased, and shamans often visited graves to communicate with departed spirits. When the rune singers chanted the ancient wisdom, they would facilitate healings. For example, this is crazy. For example, as evidenced in Runo 9, blood flow from a wound could be staunched by reciting the origin of iron rune to invoke magical power over the blood. It was believed that by recalling a thing's origin, you could invoke power over it. Since the source of blood clotting is hemoglobin, and clotting depends upon iron in the blood, a quite profound knowledge of the body is hidden in this rune. Apparently, these ancient shamans utilized healing modalities that we are just beginning to understand. as a result of their intimacy with the darkness. Living as they do so close to the North Pole, the Finns accumulated a rich treasure trove of star lore, and some of their ancient cosmoconceptions are preserved in the Kalevala. For example, the Sampo is a central object of mystery in the Kalevala, and it was envisioned as a spinning mill. On one level, it is a magic mill capable of grinding out food, money, or whatever you wish. But on an astronomical level, it is a cosmological image of the spinning world axis centered upon the pole star, which in the far north is almost straight overhead. There are some similarities between... hold on. Studies have compared Finnish and Vedic mythology, although unfortunately many of them are available only in Finnish. Evars notes the major parallels between Finnish and Vedic thought, and the reader can consult the additional reading section for other sources. The major conception shared between Finnish and Vedic Hindu cosmology is the idea that the world was born from an egg. I'm going to read you that story in a minute. In chapters 7 and 8, Evarst explores this event as it appears in the Kalevala. The Viking or Edic mythology also espouses this doctrine and makes us wonder about possible connections between the Finns and the Germanic groups that arrived in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark beginning around 500 AD. There are some similarities between Viking lore and Finnish myth and culture. Significantly, some of the Kalevala stories seem to be fragmented historical accounts of invading Vikings arriving in the Finnish fringe lands, bringing with them warrior gods to oust the matrifocal shamanistic ideologies of the early Finns. In its beauty and vision, the rich and large corpus of Finnish poetry, taken as a whole, challenges the best in oral traditions around the world, suggesting the Finns had access to a wellspring of deeper wisdom and more wide-reaching than what may have been handed to them from the Vikings. The Finnish people were probably in Finland since 500 BC, though there may have been successive waves of migrations from the east. The Lappish people of the north of Finland, according to archaeological accounts, may be descended from the same people who lived in the region over 7,000 years ago. Despite the threat posed by modernization, Finland preserved its shamanistic outlook longer than, for example, Denmark, Sweden, or Norway because of its remoteness. For most of this century, European countries have had little interest in Finland's contribution to human knowledge, and less so in America. In fact, despite a growing fascination among English speakers with Celtic mythology, ancient civilizations, mystical teachings, and shamanism, Finnish mythology has remained largely unexplored, and yet it provides a window into all of these topics. Now it is time that the insights into human spiritual unfolding that are encoded into Finnish mythology are shared with the English-speaking West. That's what I'm doing today. So, I'm going to break for a second. Did you know, it kind of hinted to it before, but I'm having a deja vu moment of doing this video and talking about this. The Finnish language is unlike the root like the Germanic languages like Swedish, Dutch, and German. They all belong to one group. The Finnish language has nothing to do with that group. Finnish, Hungarian, and Japanese share the same root language. These languages couldn't sound more different. But they share the same root. Finnish, Hungarian, and Japanese. Did you know? That's crazy. So I'm going to read you the first runo, how it starts. Runo 1. Prelude. After the style of the rune singers, Lönnrot, after the style of the rune singers, tells of his yearning to sing the poems of his people. The intimate relationship between poetry and nature is portrayed with images of nature singing. For example, the frost sings verses, and the raindrops recite poems. Creation and the birth of Väinämöinen. Ilmatar, the virgin of the air, leaves the loneliness of the sky and moves down to the sea, where the wind impregnates her. She drifts upon the water for ages, pregnant but unable to give birth. A magical bird sits brooding in the nest. The heat makes Ilmatar jerk her knee, and the egg begins to change. Oh, I skipped a whole line. Sorry. She drifts upon the water for ages, pregnant but unable to give birth. A magical bird flies by and lays several eggs on Ilmatar's upraised knee. As the bird sits brooding in the nest, the heat makes Ilmatar jerk her knee, and the eggs begin to change. One breaks open, and the lower half becomes the earth. The upper part becomes the sky. The yolk becomes the sun, and the white becomes the moon. During her 30-year pregnancy with Väinämöinen, Ilmatar sculpts the cliffs, coves, beaches, meadows, forests, and other features of the earth and sea. Finally, Väinämöinen forces his way out of his mother and floats on the sea for another 8 years before he reaches land. Let's move on. I could read more. Okay, next. Magic is usually understood to mean a sorcery or witchcraft, used to increase material benefits in a way more expedient than conventional methods. It is said to be good or white magic if one has beneficial aspirations for oneself and friends. On the other hand, it is considered to be bad or black magic if it is used to damage others. Heinrich Schertz, who says in his book, The Original History of Culture, 1915, the scientist of modern times has encountered many difficult problems in his search for answers. A more in-depth exploration of hypnotism has shown that negativity and arguments inciting skepticism are insufficient as explanations. Let's apply that to something else. And that many facts found among tribal cultures that appear to be mysticism actually have a scientifically provable foundation. Nevertheless, for example, the convenient position that all shamans and medicine men were simply skilled jesters and conjurers has to be abandoned. In the minds of their neighbors, the Finns and Lapps were always considered to be more powerful magicians and sorcerers, and they had their reasons for believing this. Beneficial skills and incantations. So they use things like prophesizing, charms, catching or bringing happiness, with things like magic signs, magic objects, words, spells, and ceremonies. I'm just going to read the white magic part. I don't even want to say those words. Black magic words. They talk a lot about let us imagine that a seer of our times wishes to turn the world's attention to the wisdom of the ages, to the existence of the secret knowledge, to the possibility of salvation from evil, and that he wishes to gather pupils around him. What means would he use? There exists only one honest and efficacious method to awaken the human being's thought and intellect to action. To appeal to their own sense of truth and justice. To urge them to seek the truth and to show them the way. This is best accomplished through the spoken and written word. The modern human being is so sensitive to any kind of influence and authority that he considers, for example, that many people are devoid of reason and free thought. Okay. It is done with the help of a method that today we would perhaps call suggestion. That is, suggestion, but not hypnotism. Hypnotism, in a limited definition, means the chaining of another person's will and consciousness so that he loses his independent thought and self-control. It is like sinking into an artificial sleep. A white Atlantean seer did not use this to teach magic because with this approach there could be no benefits in that era, only damage. Occult development is based upon self-education, and it cannot begin by arresting learning. The suggestive state that the ancient seer induced involved liberating his pupil from the group soul or the group dream which he was subject to. And he had to use suggestion to awaken a will to freedom and independence within his student. This suggestion awakened experiences that were stronger than those in everyday emotional life, opening the imagination to wider and more interesting vistas. This usually began when the seer awoke self-love in his pupil. In the earliest times, he did not need to use suggestion for this purpose. His very presence, the exuberant love emanating from his heart, spontaneously struck responsive chords in sensitive human beings. Undeniably, however, in later times, the seer did rely on the power of his imagination to draw the pupil's heart and attention near. There was no danger unless the seer was inexperienced. Atlantean magic in the Kalevala, like, it just keeps going. It just keeps going. Anyway, that's about it for today. I know I had a couple of pauses. I'm not going to read from the book anymore, but I want to quickly show you some Finnish jewelry because these earrings, excuse me. These earrings are from Finland. These are designer earrings, and this jewelry company is named Kalevala Jewelry. So I've been obsessed with these. This is also Kalevala. Okay, if you ever see this ring on a girl, you can ask her if she's Finnish or knows someone who's Finnish. But check them out, okay? These are called moon goddess earrings. So these have been based on prototypes that were found buried in churches from the 1200s. This is based on Viking jewelry. Aren't these so cool when you know that? Like, this is Finnish Viking jewelry. Now, every piece comes with, there's even a bracelet, right? There's a little bell, and like, I honestly don't even know what this water guy is. He's like, looks like half duck, half seahorse. I don't know what it is. Anyway, but yeah, this is, and even this is Kalevala, but this is why I wear these. That's why I'm wearing them today. But every piece has a story. It comes with a little pamphlet, and it tells you where it was found, and it tells you what it means, and yeah, I just think it's cool beans. So I think that's it today, guys. I'm a little, I don't know what the word is. I just feel like I'm a little bit off today, so I hope you found that interesting. An introduction to the Finnish culture. I'm going to leave a picture, a really, really crazy picture in the comments. There's this absolutely massive rock somewhere in Finland called Kummankivi, which translates to like Wonderstone, because it's perfectly balanced on like this tiny little rock underneath it, and like the space that's touching is like this, like a tiny little, the surface area of the two rocks that are touching is very small, and it's called Wonderstone because nobody knows how the hell anyone got it there. This one piece of rock is way too heavy for anybody to lift. So I'm gonna leave a couple pictures. Yeah, there is some absolutely amazing ancient stuff to be explored about Finland. Who knew? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.